All right, guys. Bittersweet. We're here. The finale. No more Shogun Tuesdays. Who wants to get started here? Who wants to start?
So, for 9 podcasts of covering this show, I have started with my thoughts, and Jimmy,
Yes.
you have ended. So, let's flip the script and
Okay.
let's let Mr. Nova over there start with
All
his
right.
thoughts on the series and the episode as a whole.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if we want to start or end with the fact I think it would be a cool conversation to have to compare to other miniseries that exist. Haunting of Hill
Hmm.
House, Band of Brothers, any of that kind of stuff. Maybe we could do that towards the end. I
Yeah.
think it's definitely top five, maybe three, one or two almost. I mean, it's definitely one of my top miniseries of all time. I don't know if I'm going recency bias here, so I don't like to say two or three. I'm not going to put it over Hill House, I don't think still. I just love Haunting of Hill House, and I think that's more relative and based on taste. But yeah, I thought this was an amazing season of television. We should have guessed after episode
Hmm.
7 to 8 to 9 how everything was going. Our boy Toranaga did not want war. He wanted peace. He had a grand scheme that was going throughout this entire season. And we kept saying, when's the battle happening? When's the battle happening? And it was never going to happen, and we'll talk about it for better or for worse. Is it cool that we didn't need to see a battle? Did we want to see a battle? We can get into that. But I thought it was beautifully done, this finale. Just all of his plans coming to fruition and literally a peaceful takeover as the Shogun. There's so many times this episode where there's tears in the chat.
Hmm.
There's some mic drops. I was tweeting some things that were just killing me, hilarious, and then killing me, making me cry. But yeah, it was a great episode. What'd you guys think?
I loved it. And, if we, I've been saying it every episode, multiple times every episode, just incredible performances from an insane cast. These
Yeah.
characters, oh man, they're gonna probably make a bunch of lists that we do later on when we do top 10 lists or something like that. Because, like, if I were to rob a bank, I'd probably want Toranaga on my team now, right? That was that was one of the ones we did, right? Jewelry heist. So, but
That's
back
true.
back to this app, it's surprises all the way till the end. It
Hmm.
it's like you're saying, we should have guessed. It almost was obvious because like he's kind of like telling us what, his plan is. This he wants no bloodshed, and it got me all the way till the very end. Last episode I was saying, one thing I want to see, maybe cannon fire in this big battle that's about to come. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in thinking that there was going to be a big battle,
Oh
but
no,
Hmm.
you're
at
not. We were
at
talking all about it.
at the same time, it's so obvious. That's what he wanted to avoid this whole time. So I was expecting a battle, right? So it kind of
Hmm.
shifted my perspective of how I viewed this first episode on my first take. I was a little confused, but on the second rewatch, uh, picked up on so much. Every single second of screen time has a meaning. It's amazing. The rewatch value, even after watching, the finale, going back to one, knowing some of the stuff, Mariko holding her rosary. It's so well thought out. I can't wait to kind of discuss the contents of this episode because I have so many questions for you guys too. And this is when we figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna need you guys to help out a little more than we've done in the past for clarifying on either my interpretation of some scenes or some questions
Yeah.
I have because I agree, like there's some things we need to clear up. But overall, this was incredible. The show was a damn near 10 out of 10 for me. There was some noise online about people freaking out that there was no epic action, and I am fully on that side where I totally expected it. We didn't even one time theorize that it wasn't going to happen, but they just completely subverted the expectations, and I thought it was done in such a believable and satisfying way, throwing all that respect onto Toranaga. It was really a build up to see how intelligent and smart he was, and how far reaching his plans really could go, and how good he was at reading people. It all came together super well. We're going to break that down in detail as we go throughout this, but the after a rewatch, it just made so much sense. And Paul, you said it right there. Toranaga is one of the best characters I've ever seen that benefits from rewatching the show after you know the ending. Like almost every podcast episode I've almost not liked him on the first watch, and then after you kind of realize where the plot's going or what his plan is, you rewatch it, and then both the acting gets elevated and like the reasoning behind what's going on just makes so much sense. So all in all, just fantastic. Like this episode, it's not going to be as well received as episode 9 when there's still potential going forward. Like on IMDb, I think 9 is still the highest at like I think it was a 9. I wrote it down. What was it? It was a 9.6. And this episode opened up at a 9.0. It's down to about an 8.8. So it's going to settle right in the middle of the season in terms of ratings from critics. That's fine. Like finales are always the hardest. Everybody knows that, especially finales, not just for a season, for a series. So I'm more than happy with the ratings and how the internet's reacting. Everybody loves this show. Everybody's calling for more limited series that ooze passion like this and care about the details and have the actors, be culturally correct. Like everything about this show is freaking amazing. And just some of the characters are going to be unforgettable. Like Yabu was one of the most fun guys to podcast about. Like
Yeah.
like across all shows we've done in Bingetown. Like we had no it's that meme. It's like don't let them know your next step or whatever it is. And he's just kind of doing random things. You never know. But his facial acting was amazing. Like what he did for the plot, he was great. JB was an all-star. Like I will forever love him as JB, and he will that actor. Jimmy, give me his name again.
Cosmo Jarvis.
Cosmo Jarvis. Never put it to memory. Shout out Peaky Blinders though. He is just forever gonna be somebody that I just associate with high quality TV. He's great. Just and Mariko, oh my God, like she wasn't even in this episode, and she still is having an impact. I mean, I'm still thinking about her episode in or her moments in episode 9, but there was full circle moments that were beautiful. There was poetry that I know, Paul, you broke down in an essay that you're going to read a little bit later. There was just all the side characters, like even Omi and Fuji and Miraji, the samurai, like they all played such a good part, and like everything to do with this finale. I think I walked away satisfied. Like it wasn't what I was expecting or maybe what I wanted, but it was what I needed. And this show is just going to go
Yeah.
down as like I'm spoiling it. It's a 10 out of 10 for me almost. I don't. I'll have to think about it while we're podcasting about it of if I think it's the best limited series, and I think Haunting of Hill House beats it. Watchmen is close to like right around that level, but if True Detective counts, that's up there too. But besides that, we're talking about some of the best TV that I've watched in the last couple of years, and
Oh yeah.
man, it just hit. So,
Love to
It's
hear
high
it.
praise. That's high praise.
mhm.
But no,
It
totally agree
is.
with everything.
But no
We're gonna
Rodriguez bullshit. Sorry.
That
yeah.
that was crazy, man. That hurt
Valid
my heart.
valid complaint.
Mhm.
But yeah, at the end we're gonna maybe touch on some of our favorite characters and favorite scenes.
Mhm.
So yeah, stick around if you want to listen to that too.
And by maybe you mean
But
definitely.
that yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
It's the mystery aspect, you know. You
Maybe
gotta
just so you guys keep listening to find out if we do it, but we're gonna
yeah,
do it.
exactly. But a dream of a dream. So is this opening scene basically the name of this episode?
Yeah.
I think it's so are we if we're ready to just dive, we're gonna start talking
Yeah,
through
let's
this,
do
Yeah,
right?
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Let's go.
Because like after the episode starts directly after the explosion from Mariko and it's JB in his head, either seeing the future or seeing a vision of the future or a dream of a dream. And that's what
Right.
we're gonna discuss. I think it's pretty explicit about it being like a vision and not actually being the truth because of the whole idea of him dropping Mariko's cross into the funeral procession towards the end. I think that's
Agreed.
them. That's not like them leaving it up for interpretation, in my opinion. That's like not like Inception's ending. That's like them saying like this was a cold opening that was you're gonna think like JB's gonna go through this big war, but he's not. So like even and that was part of it as well, is like his grandchildren in England are saying like, oh, our grandfather killed all these Japanese samurai, but like that didn't even happen. So this can't be true. So I
Right.
think it's more like, yes, this is what the name of the episode's really about. And it's just all about JB trying to deal with this trauma. And then he flashes back to Mariko in the present.
No, I agree with you 100%. I thought it was a vision, a dream of a dream. I know some people were wondering if it was just like another cross that he was holding, but no, I took it. It was the exact same cross. It was Mariko's cross, and he's holding it just like she would, squeezing it at the times that it's needed. I think you broke it down perfectly, Luke. I fully took it like it was a vision.
Mhm.
Okay. So I didn't have any idea what was going on the first time I was watching. It was the start of the second rewatch where I was like, okay, the name of the episode kind of, shed some light on it. And exactly, Mariko's Cross. I had to take pictures make sure I fucking took a picture of him. First of all, if that was Cosmo in old man makeup,
I
incredible
guess it
job.
was, yeah.
I think it
I mean, it
was.
looked like him. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah.
It resembled him at least. So they either
And I
found
think
somebody that
also,
looked like him or did an
yeah,
amazing job.
and I think also we'll get to it, but part of the point of Toranaga's plan and what we find out is that JB will never leave Japan, right?
Hmm.
And obviously, JB's younger than Toranaga, so maybe Toranaga will pass away one day and JB could have left, but could have left to have kids who have kids to be a grandfather.
Well, he already has kids.
He does, but I mean, I guess if he's gonna go find them, I mean, he's a pretty bad dad, but
Yeah.
Seriously.
but yeah, but anyway, also Toranaga, this is the one thing that we definitely will have to talk about, but he kind of explains that like JB has a purpose, but he doesn't have a purpose. And
Hmm.
the whole thing about like you said, Luke, this is the sword that was given to him and he sliced some whatever they said savages, right? He helped Toranaga take down other savages and this and that. That's not what JB's purpose was
Yeah.
Hmm.
for
So
Toranaga and for Japan.
that's was kind of my like only I wouldn't even call it a complaint, but it's like I was a little upset that by saying this, like, oh, why is it chipped? It's because he fought off a whole army of Japanese assassins. I'm expecting to watch that, right? And I think that's the point. You think that's going to be the direct aftermath of the explosion. And it's annoying kind of on the rewatch that they did kind of trick you like that. Like I was trying to think, why would they do that? But you kind of explaining that this is, I don't know. It still doesn't make total sense to me, but the way that you just said it, that it's within JB's mind thinking about a possibility of a future, I guess. But
Because Toranaga's plan and what Toranaga is doing is making JB think he has a purpose, even though technically he does not. He
okay,
brings JB back to life in this moment in the finale because JB, almost like what he was explaining in the other episodes, I don't know where I belong. I'll fight your fight. I don't belong here. I don't belong there. The fact that Toranaga gives him a purpose, but really, it isn't a purpose. It's not, it's just a fake purpose to give him meaning to his life.
yeah,
So, in his own head, when this vision is happening, he may think that's what I was supposed to do, or that's what
gotcha.
I'm going to do in the future.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes me appreciate it more, and it seems like less of a trick and more of, JB's dream in that moment. But also, I did like what you said, Jimmy. Like the kids are saying, "Oh, was it really given to you by a savage?" And it's just so ironic because,
Hmm.
he
You're
was
right.
called a
It's the complete
barbarian.
opposite. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
when he
Yeah.
was over there.
And little tinfoil hattie, like I saw conversations on Reddit saying how people were trying to save this and say that this could be the future if when they pull the Erasmus out of the ship, like it has the
Oh,
necklace in there because it fell. But whatever, that's not even worth talking about. I'm just saying that there's a possibility that people can play that card where they're saying it's possible.
Right.
But
I did
whatever.
think that, and I was like, "Yeah, but what's he gonna do? Scuba like diving isn't like really a thing, right?
No,
It's
saying
gonna
like it
be
fell onto
Saying it
I
like
don't
fell
know.
on
Yeah.
it's like hanging from one of the, yeah,
and the
yeah.
current,
Ships that
like,
they
yeah,
recover.
It's
I
like
don't
not
know.
like on the actual ship, like it fell from the water onto the ship. They pull it out and it's like hanging, dangling from the
Yeah.
ship.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
Which, nah, I don't need.
So yeah, we're not whatever. That doesn't even that's not as fun of as an ending of JB being stuck in Japan. I kind of like that idea way more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to wake him up from this vision, he gets shaken by Yabu, and Yabu ends up getting heard saying, "Forgive me," which someone in
Right.
the room clocked that, and that's going to play a part later. Nothing really to talk about there. So let's just move on to the direct aftermath of this explosion and all of the events that the dominoes that it caused in Osaka, because it starts with every single one of the noble hostages leaving, including Lady Shizu and Lady Kiri of Toranaga's household. So they're all leaving. And then we skip over to the council meeting, all freaking out. Like Kiyama
Yeah.
and Ono are caring about their religion and they want to respect Mariko for being a Catholic, and they want to bury her
Hmm.
the right way. Like we have Psyche doing his funny little knee crawl, which I thought
Yeah.
was hilarious when he delivers the letter to Ishido saying from Toranaga that he is pissed that they killed his
Yeah.
vassal Mariko, and now it's like gloves off, like no more honorable death. We're going to war, and this is all part of the plan. And all at the same
Yeah.
time, Ochiba's in the background, both absorbing and then eventually advising and giving commands on what to be done with Mariko. But there's a couple of cool conversations here, all ending with an earthquake, which is supposed to be a bad omen sign saying,
Hmm.
do not go to war with Toranaga. So that comes full circle later this episode, but a bunch of cool things here. And I just want to shout out to Kiyama and Ono, who I thought were just going to be the absolute worst the entire show. And they somehow ended up trying to be somewhat respectful about Mariko. So I like that. And then Ochiba, I thought did a great job of surprising me and subverting my expectations as a character as a whole, where she really never wanted anything bad for Mariko, and that got proven last episode. And I just felt like that she treated her as a genuine friend, and her connection with Mariko is a big reason she ends up turning and siding with Toranaga. So just a beautiful scene. Whatever you guys want to bring up that I didn't just cover right there.
Just to roll off of what you were saying about Lady Oshiba, last episode, after Mariko and her talked, I said, yeah, well, I kind of took that as they kind of saying, here's my stance, here's your stance. We're not going to, change our minds. And I was completely wrong because with the last line, Mariko completely switched Lady Ochiba's plan of attack. And maybe
Mhm.
it did go follow through with Mariko's actual death that kind of sealed it. But I did not see Lady Ochiba ever like aligning with Toranaga because the way
Same.
she was introduced, I was like, dude, she hates that guy.
Hmm.
So didn't see that coming at all. So that was really cool to see that conversation and Mariko's insane diction pays off. I mean, she always says the right thing. One small thing, Lady Shizu, and when they're walking out, they're not being carried anymore. They're walking actually, and assuming Mariko's dead body is in the palanquins now. So I don't know. Just thought that was respectful that they're actually going to
Uh,
walk and not be
I
carried.
I don't know if
Well,
it
they do
was
bury her, but I
because
don't
they bury
know
her
when.
there.
By the time JB wakes up, she's already buried. I don't know. Does JB see them leaving? That's what before JB is about to leave too, right?
He
I
had
Um,
I
not
took it the
waken
same.
up yet at that point.
Okay, but
no.
I took it the same way at first, Paul. But I do think they buried her there,
Okay.
didn't they?
Well, there was also other like handmaids that were killed in the
Yeah.
explosion there, so
Right.
maybe it was
Yeah.
one of them. So,
Hmm.
Yeah.
either way, they were walking instead of being carried, which shows respect. But yeah, Kiyama and Ono never ever was I
Kiyomo,
like,
the tag team.
yeah,
Kyo
yeah,
no.
Kiyono.
putting
Wow,
them
why did we
together.
wait so long to coin that?
But I did not see them actually like trying to like fight for what's right. Exactly what you're
Hmm.
saying. That was totally like Shyamalanian twist for me.
I guess they gave up on trying to like hide from Ono behind the curtain. In the
Yeah.
last however many episodes, he's just like, "Hey
Yeah.
guys, you
We
wanna
didn't get, yeah, if we
take
didn't
my
get leprosy
disease?"
now, and
Yeah,
then we're never gonna get it. Also, I had Saeki's sick knee slide written down too.
Dude,
Live.
yeah, that was a sick knee slide.
let's talk about that for a second, just
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Psyche might be my biggest complaint of the whole show, unfortunately, just because we should have gotten a scene with him either having been in on the plan or being told of the plan about by Tornaga, or there should have been some more disputes when the battle of the five armies, I'm stealing that from Lord of the Rings, happens like way in the future, because Psyche's army would have been there and he would have not fallen for the same. I mean, when the whole idea was that Ishido was going to lose the support of the heir's army, which happens in this scene, or I mean, they talk about the heir's army in this scene, and that was going to
right.
convince all the other councilmen to pull back. But why would Psyche be? I feel like he was his own entity almost more than just being an appendage of the council, and it just felt like he might have been the most underused character of the show. And I don't know, maybe talk
Yeah.
me out of it.
Well, it's a shame because Psyche was so good in what he was given in his main episode.
Yeah.
The question here is like you said, Luke, did he know the plan and was he ready to deliver that letter knowing that at some point Mariko was going to die and oh, here it comes. Mariko dies. Let's go. And
Right.
then here's the letter. It's already ready. It's already written. This is what's next. He could have been part of the plan and done that, or it's just that the letter came to him as part of the plan and he didn't know. Again, it's tough because I'm sure many people will say, why do we care so much? But I think that giving him a full episode and making us like him that much, I would have liked to know his motivation a little bit more. I would have liked to know
Right.
if he was on this side or this side. You know,
Mhm.
they gave him a lot in the one episode where you're like, all right, this is going to be an antagonist, or if he's on the side, one of our homies. But then he became background noise in the
Hmm.
rest of the episodes.
Yeah, yeah, and
I wouldn't have been upset if they like I was calling for him to be on our side and him to flip, but even if he didn't do that, as long as they gave us a conversation, like how is he just going to go back to normal with his brother? Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Why are these two not like having this family like rivalry now? Like there's needs to be
mhm,
some implications of this. I just wanted a single conversation, either a flashback of him being in on the plan or current timeline where he just apologizes to Toranaga or like somehow agrees to be in on the plan with him. Just something. That's
Yeah.
like my
no,
biggest complaint. And I'm happy we're getting it out of the way because I really won't say another negative thing probably for the rest of this episode.
I
Yeah.
agree. It would have been cool to see Saiki and Tornaga have a conversation, or at least
Hmm.
see their first interaction. Exactly what you guys are saying. I think he just was doing what he could to get his legacy, right? And when he had that spa scene with Nagakato and Omi, I think whatever he was saying there was pretty much the most transparent he was being to who he actually is. That's just a guess, assuming he wasn't with Tornaga and he really was just trying to gain land and, become the ruler of a certain fiefdom or something, or more fiefdoms because he was already ruler of one.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
um, I think, yeah, he was just transparent. And there's a chance that I see Toranaga, like, their first interaction, Saki's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like, no hard feelings, right? It wasn't personal, it's just business." And Toranaga being like, "Yeah, no worries. Let's go for peace. That's
Well,
the
I
whole
mean, that's the
dream."
thing. We get a scene where Toranaga is like cool with Yabu. I mean, he knows who
Hmm.
Yabu is. He understands who Yabu is, and he calls him a POS basically when he sends him to death. But when they have their scene at the end, which is one of the most important scenes in the entire series, it's not like Toranaga really is like, "You suck, bro. I hate you." He
Hmm.
understands who he is, and like you said, Paul, he wants peace. I feel like he easily could have just been like, all right, I understand, Psyche, we're good. Just be good. Don't freaking throw down with me. Understand I'm the Shogun and this is it.
But I wanted to
And
see
we'll have
that.
peace. Yeah, no, I understand. I definitely
Yeah.
understand that.
And then everything would have been fine. But either way, he is background noise for the rest of this episode. So if there's any other Psyche takes you want to throw out there,
Yeah.
now's the time because we're not going to probably talk about him again. Good.
Nah, it's a good
Cool.
knee
The only
slide.
other thing I want to the only other thing I want to bring up is I was happy with the writing for Ishido in this scene because they made him again smarter than I was giving him credit for, where he completely dissected all of Toranaga's plan. Like he realized the pieces that were there, he realized the implications of Mariko's death. So I just like that he ended up being more of a figurehead for the bad side than I gave him credit for. I thought it was always just going to be Ochiba being the Cersei character, but that's not how it went. So again, I like
Right.
that they subverted my expectations, but they did it in a satisfying way. So because he ended up being a great bad guy, as
Yeah.
if you want to call him a bad guy. But anyway, the earthquake happens, the omens of, Ishido freaks out saying like, don't be like the peasants. We don't care about omens. Like we're going to war. Now he goes directly from this conversation to going to see Yabu, who is
Hmm.
just shell shocked. Like he almost
Yeah.
can't hear. He's losing his mind a little bit, all mixed in with the grief of him realizing that he directly caused Mariko to die. And this is again just like beautiful character moments because this almost makes us empathetic to him for him fucking us over, and it's kind of
Yeah.
nice because I want to just like this guy. Like Yabu is the man, and this scene is crazy with like his the metaphors that he's speaking about with the catfish. He actually brings up the last time an earthquake like this happened before an almost war with the previous Taiko and Toranaga where it actually caused peace. I did not get any vibes from the whole prior to episode 10 show that Toranaga and the Taiko were like enemies like that. So we could talk
Agreed.
about that if we want. That
Yeah.
was a little bit weird. But then this scene ends with Yabu getting his mission from Ishido to go back to Izu and gather his army for the war.
Okay. So, number one, I fully agree when they said that the Taiko and Toranaga were going to go to war, I literally had to rewind and listen again
Hmm.
because I was like, is that the same Taiko? Is there a Taiko before him that he almost went to war with? Our fans, our listeners, our friends can help us out on that. There's been plenty of people hitting us up with the history lessons. And now that we don't care about spoilers, tell us everything. We're happy to hear it. But yeah, I was definitely confused there. Yabu, we'll get into him more, but I'm like Tornaga. Like, I love him for who he is. He is who he
Hmm.
is. Like in the
Yeah.
beginning, I remember we were like, all right, this guy is a POS. He boiled someone to death, right? That's how we first started with him. But now it's kind of crazy just to think that he wasn't even doing it to be like cruel. He was doing it because he was freaking crazy testing different methods of death. And he
Hmm.
would have done it to himself just like we get in a later episode or later scene where he's like, "Give me a crazy death, give me something, throw me the dogs," or it's just like he's wild. So the fact that this episode or episode 9, and then this episode where he was like, "I was told she was just going to be captured. You did not tell me she was going to die, and it probably wasn't even the plan that she was going to die, except for Tornaga's part of the plan." But
Hmm.
yeah, there's some empathy there. He's still a snake. He's schemer. He's not fully our homie, but you can love him for who he is.
It's very Murphy-like in that way.
Yeah,
Just
the cockroach
if
from
you
the
if
hundred, man.
yeah, like he is just somebody who goes back and forth, plays the fence. You kind of love him even when you hate him. It's just great.
Yeah. I mean, you guys nailed it. He is who he is. And it sucks that Ishido kind of put him in that situation where he said, assist me or you're gonna die. But he did what he thought in the moment was gonna keep him alive. Sucks though, she was a little bit more loyal. And in regards to Toranaga and Taiko being enemies, I just took it as when Yabu says that he was forced to make peace with Toranaga, that's when he actually became like part of his council and then became,
And then
I'm
they
sure.
became friendly.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's why he
works.
respected him so much.
Yeah,
Just came out of left field is all I was saying. It's not like
yeah,
it breaks anything or makes me feel like the writing was weird.
Yeah,
right. Agreed.
I got
Okay. So
Well,
this
actually, let
is
me ask you
go ahead.
one question before you go further. If you're a Shido, do you assume that Yabu was going to get busted when you put him on this mission?
you.
Do
Yeah,
you assume that Tornaga was going to bust his ass and then sends him to death when
yeah.
you're saying go back?
I think everything happened like Toranaga thought it would. That's why,
And
like,
Ishidu, I'm saying too. Do you think Ishidu assumed that Yabu would get screwed over?
uh, yeah. I mean, assume.
I don't
I
No,
mean,
know.
I know not because he
I
said
don't
return
think
and
so.
gather your army and wait for my next move. So, Ishidu definitely thought that Yabu was going to be like an ally. He even says like, yeah, you're going to get a seat on the council.
Yeah, I
So,
yeah,
didn't
I wasn't
mention
sure
that.
if he was blowing smoke up his ass and just to get him out of there
mm,
and cutting loose ends, or
No, I think
or if he just
him getting
assumed.
caught, letting the shinobi in and saying forgive me it was a huge trigger for all of this to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of like what Tornaga, he's like, hey, thanks for doing exactly what I needed you to do, but this is the next part. I got to kill you in
Hmm.
the end
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to where our boy JB finally wakes up. He's concussed as hell, like he's got a wrapping on his head. Of course he is. He was right next to the bomb. And
Hmm.
he has a moment here where again the acting was great. He's starting to get emotional and he's realizing that Mariko is actually I missed this. This was all in the beginning, right? Where he
Right when he
actually like
goes up to
cries
her.
out
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
yeah, we'll lump it in with all this though. He like cries out and has that moment where he like sends her off to God in quotation because goes on to talk to Martin. And this scenes that I'm about to bring up doesn't know if it was the Protestant God, the Catholic God. He says like God. So it was a good moment for him to drop his religious bias to kind of push somebody along to the afterlife that he just cared so deeply about. And it was
Hmm.
awesome just hearing him get emotional because he's been doing such a good job these last two episodes, realizing how hopeless it is to fight against the grain. Maybe that was the whole sand garden analogy. But anyway,
Right.
when he is finally ready to leave, he's told or wakes up and is told about Mariko being buried. He's given leave to go back to Ito and he's
Yeah.
being sent off with Father Martin. And basically, Father Martin tells him the deal here in the forest. He says you were going to die, but then there was a deal that was made in place for your life. You're just gonna have to trust me. But what leads up to that is just some cool moments because I love Father Martin. I think he's a great character. Even though
Yeah.
he's on the other side, he's a very reasonable person. He cares about life. He cares about his religion. He's just a good dude to his core. And him like enacting like Mariko would be really happy to see us getting along and all that stuff. It was a cool little moment. And his final scene, or I guess it leads into his final scene of him sending JB off. But he was a great character. Didn't do anything. I mean, like I don't really have anything else to add there. But just what are you guys' thoughts about this conversation in the forest?
I loved the beginning of it where Martine is saying like, "Oh, thank God that's all over. The hostages are released. You know, it's a
Hmm.
shame about Toranaga though. Like he'll be dead in weeks." And John's just like, "You don't know Toranaga if you think
Yeah.
he's gonna surrender. Like, what are you talking about?" That was just you can't blame him because last thing Martine saw was Hiramatsu killing himself, and he really believed it was dead. But
Hmm.
it's funny. JB is just like, dude. I know you're just trying to make conversation, but that's not going to happen whatsoever.
Hmm.
And just yeah, I love how John, as he's talking, he's just kind of like looking around the woods because he's expecting it, and
Yeah. He
he
knows
was
it's
right.
coming.
He was right to. He even says, "Yeah, you were supposed to die here, but a deal struck." So
They're
I
really
thought,
unoriginal with the bandits attacking in the woods, man.
Yeah, that was
yeah,
the third time.
they got to know, right? They got to know at this point. But yeah, the last scene of when Martine tells John that it was Mariko who made the deal, and John goes in the boat and he's crying. Man, that hit
Yeah.
home. He's just realizing that she saved him even one last time after everything that she was doing. She still saves him, and he
It
starts
was
breaking down.
America, man.
it, it was her dying wish to Father Martin to help save JB, and it worked out incredibly well.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have too much to add. I really was wrong about Father Martin. I was the
Hmm.
one who was saying I thought he was going to be a bad guy. I guess what Big Papa ended up being is what I thought Martine was going to be a part of. Big Papa doesn't even have a spot in this episode, which, it's
Yeah,
whatever. But
Tiny Papa.
yeah, but honestly, I thought Martine had some hard hitting scenes in this episode because, again, like you said, the emotional scenes and Cosmo Jarvis's acting with the crying, the fight and the tears, and then they're coming on the boat. Ugh, man,
Hmm.
cutting
Hmm.
onions, cutting
Two
onions.
things, two things real quick. Martine tells John, "Hey, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about Mariko in the afterlife. She came to me. She was
Hmm.
Right.
seeked absolution. She's all good." And then I love John's line when he's talking about, perhaps there will be a time where we set aside our differences. All this nonsense, Catholics, uh, Protestants, all the other shitists. I just
Yeah,
thought,
I can't believe
just
it. I'm glad you brought that up. I was laughing at shittists.
yeah, he's just gold with what he comes out of his mouth. But
All
at
the
the
other
end of
shittists.
the end of that was like, yeah, we both know that day's never gonna come though. We're
Yeah.
never gonna like be civil.
Yeah.
Jimmy, does it make you sad that as much right that you've gotten for this season, what sticks out is always going to be you thought Father Martin was evil and that JB's boys were dead. Those are going to be the two things that stick out whenever I think of
Dude,
Shogun.
whenever I'm doing my theory stuff, it's always what I don't get that gets remembered.
It's so true.
Unless it's Carnival Row and I figure out the
Nail the
entire
whole show.
ending
Yeah.
4 episodes before. But otherwise, it's always funny to be like, dude, remember when you thought that was coming? Like, there's been some good ones in the
Mhm.
shows we've covered.
Okay, so let's move on. And there are two quick scenes. The first being the last in Osaka for a minute here, where we see Ochiba is finishing Mariko's poem about
Hmm.
the leafless branch or whatever it is, and she's talking with the air and they're talking poetry. And this is her actually writing the note that she's eventually going to send to Toranaga, confirming that she's in on the plan to be on his side. So we could talk about that, and then the other one is an isolated scene of Toranaga basically getting ready for everything to start being finalized, and he lets his falcon go, and he says, "Bear many daughters," which was a very interesting quote.
Hmm.
Usually sons, right? I don't know what that's about, but maybe that's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. That one didn't make sense to me, unless it's like to have children and like just
Yeah,
continue
all
your
the
yeah.
your
But
lineage keep
He took
but
the
I don't
yes,
know.
freaking cool hairpiece
Yeah, I
off the
liked his hat.
Falcon, which was
Yeah.
awesome.
yeah, that
Just
was
made him
Yeah,
look
awesome.
that
like Toranaga.
with the thing.
Yeah. I was saying, what's the deal with this Hawk through like 4 episodes? And really, in
Falcon.
the end, I'm sorry, this Falcon, and in the end, it really was just to symbolize Nagakado. So
Yeah.
it's cool that he was in the end. And then also, but Lady Ochiba, when she's talking about her poem, of course, it's the line, flowers are only flowers because they fall. Thankfully, because the wind, just getting that last line that Mariko said to her. And
Yeah.
earlier, when the Council of Regents was there, and she says, like, Mariko will be celebrated generously.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that was her just trying to celebrate Mariko's life, or do you think that was actually her trying to like make Ishido not attack? And she already had her minds made up because of Mariko in the previous conversation. So
Give
she
her more
did that.
time to get the letter.
Yeah, like Lady Ochiba purposefully said, we're going to celebrate Mariko's funeral for like a while just so you can attack and then I can, get the letter to Toranaga.
I think it's the same thing as Nagakado's situation with Toranaga, where he was sad and it sucked, but he was also opportunistic and used it as a way to get his agenda finished. So I think it kind of works in two ways for Uchiba.
Yeah, and I also think Oshiba may have had her mind made up by that point, but the fact that Ishido is technically going to be her husband and the person she's siding with, and she has these deep feelings for Mariko, and he's like, "Oh, it sucks, wish we could take care of this for Mariko, but we're going to war. Screw her." In my head too, that's like another thing cementing that she's like, I'm done with Ishido. Like I don't, you know,
Mhm.
we're gonna celebrate. And because I mean she kind of snapped in and was like, no, we're celebrating Mariko.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Back off, bro.
Okay.
Oh wait,
Let's
I wanted to ask you something, and I don't know if this is something I missed or I wasn't understanding, but when she's sitting there with the air and she's like, so how would you finish the poem? And he's kind of like fruit and stuff, and she's like, good, but nah, no thank you. Like I mean, she basically did just say like screw you, right? When he was like
No.
giving her the
No, she went with it a little bit. So I think the opening line was a leafless branch, and then he's like, she says, "Well, what would you do?" And he's like, "Well, branches have fruit and flowers." And then using that flowers aspect, she was like,
okay,
"Okay,
because I
why
mean it was
don't?"
just cracking me up because I thought she
Yeah,
because I
I
thought she
thought it
was
was
like
a
so
good
what,
answer by the air. I thought I was
yeah,
like,
but I
oh, it
that's
was
was
better than
great,
I could have come up with.
she's like, how would you
100%.
finish? And he's like, well, what about the fruit and the flower? And she's like, cool, but how about we
Yeah,
say that all flowers are only flowers
Yeah, yeah,
because they
yeah,
fall?
yeah, that actually sucks. So
Yeah,
we're gonna go with this.
actually, Air, you're an
yeah.
idiot, and we're not gonna go with that. I can't believe you're the heir, but
It is
Can't believe
so
he
good
just
though.
stayed so innocent from episode one all the way through the end. Like he
Yeah.
was living his best life.
well, it's like, again, we always hate to say comparing to Game of Thrones, but it's anything, whether it's Last Kingdom, Game of Thrones, it's just wild to think about some 12-year-old kid is supposed to be the heir that's going to be the next leader of an entire country, nation, whatever. He's just a little kid. Say like you're
Mhm.
expecting things of them in the show, but it's like he's just gonna be a little kid this whole time. He's not gonna do
Very
anything.
realistic. Yeah, exactly. He pulled no strings. He was just there.
Yeah, he's just
Uh,
Yeah.
like winking at JB and having some fun.
Okay, let's get back into our transition from all the Osaka scenes into now being back in Ajiro, the fisherman city that's run by Omi and technically Yabu as well. And we're on the boat. There's this hilarious scene where Yabu is mentally breaking. He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah,
He's freaking out. He knows he's gonna have to be confronted by all the people that he's feeling guilt about. And he like does the whole teach me how to dive like Toranaga, and he like rips his shirt off. All this stuff's happening, whatever. But as they're pulling up, they see that the Erasmus was sunk, and you could see it was kind of burned and it's like broken. It's all on the bottom of the bay, and so we can talk about that. And then let's just take it all the way through to them arriving on shore, where Omi very reluctantly gives all the orders to strip Yabu of his blades, and then take him to basically have a trial in front of Toranaga. And then we can lump
yeah,
in Miraji explaining that he thinks that the Christians were the ones that destroyed the boat, but that was kind of a ploy because he's obviously Toranaga's right hand man undercover. So we'll
right.
do everything before they get to Yabu's trial.
Yeah, that was a little hard to see Yabu getting grabbed by his own men, because or obviously mad at him. He, turned on his people that he was supposed to protect and got Lady Monaco killed. But at the same time, he's kind of losing it. And then when he sees Omi, he's all excited and he's running up, and then his own men grab him, and he knows like right
Oh
away.
yeah,
He
it's
he's
over.
like as soon as he asks for his swords, it's like okay, yep, we're going to Toranaga. I get it.
Hmm.
I do like when it comes to Yabu, of all the things we said good and bad about him, he feels this guilt for what he did to Mariko, and it's not like he was fighting it at all. As soon as he was asked if he did it, he was like, "Yeah, I did it," and he felt
Hmm.
awful about it. And when he was getting grabbed, yeah, he fought a little bit, but they said, "Give me your swords." He said, "Bring the swords." It's not like he was like, "I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything." I feel like he just was ready to take his punishment, and when he's breaking on the ship, hilarious. And I like how you were saying, Luke, it was more about he doesn't want to face or Paul, I don't remember who said it, sorry. He doesn't want to face who he just screwed over. He basically just literally thinks he screwed over Tornaga and all of his people. And now he has to go quote unquote home to them. I was taking it like he thought he was gonna have to like go there to get busted. Like he was worried that he was gonna get busted, but I kind of like that way better.
It was
And yeah,
both
I
because
mean,
he does make the
yeah,
statement to
he's like, we can
JB
go to
saying like,
get
"Take me to England, like let's go, let's get out of
Yeah,
here."
we can go. Yeah, and JB says, "Hold yourself together or get yourself together."
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, yeah. Teach me how to dive, man.
yeah.
JB also realizes when he's talking to Miraji, and Miraji says, "We think it's Christians." JB, he's Christians. That makes sense. It clicks for him that Mariko really did save his life again, but that was the other half of it. She
Right.
hated this war that they were having between the two.
Yeah. And I felt sad for Omi, especially after the rewatch and like how much he actually cares about Yabu. And
Yeah.
he was a great character, and I've been saying it constantly. People love his character growth in the books. I felt that he was pretty consistent the entire show, and he felt like a very realistic, realized character. Like we didn't need more, and he played just enough of a pivotal role at random parts throughout the season that I walked away as him being like a great side character. Felt like his whole arc was complete. So they end up walking up to the dais, I guess. I don't really know. Like the little setup that Toranaga has to have this whole trial for Yabu, with Omi giving the news that he got the secret letter from one of the handmaidens who saw him do all these things. And the couple things that I want to point out is that one, it's such a good moment, like full circle from episode 2 when it was JB here being treated to trial by Yabu and also Omi at the time, and now it's flipped. Like the whole thing is
Yeah.
the dynamics different. They did a good job there making that like kind of be a parallel. But the takeaway from the scene is that Yabu is going to be stripped of all his lands, ordered to kill himself, and he tries to make his last wish to give everything to Omi, which adds to the tragedy of it all, where he does actually
Yeah.
care about his nephew, treats him like a son. He goes on to say later. But yeah, it was just a good moment, and Toranaga was having none of it. This was like how it was kind of set up, and there was no deviating from the plan, and it just gets realized here. But I will also, my last piece is saying that JB was picking up on some of these words and
Yeah.
realizing that Yabu was the direct cause of Mariko's death. I thought he was going to have a more emotional and physical reaction there on the spot. I guess it shows growth that he was unwilling to break the honor of this like trial that's being led by Toranaga, but also like he did at least have like the complete utter shocked sadness in his eyes when he was looking at him and realizing this was happening. The camera was doing a great job of panning over to him when keywords were being said and that he should be picking up. So just a well done
Mhm.
scene, and that was definitely needed to transition us to eventually Yabu's death.
Yeah, his face would twinge with like pain or
Hmm.
surprise every once in a while, especially when Yabu just straight up says, "Yeah, I did it. I
Yeah.
did help." So I thought that was going to come into play when Yabu asked for Blackthorne to be his second. I was
Yeah.
like, I thought, John was going to do it with like anger and then, actually come to acceptance right before he does it at the end or something like this. I had a whole thing going in my head. And then Toranaga's like, no. He doesn't even give a reason. He just says no, right? Like,
Hmm.
did he say no because he wanted to be Yabu second? because he always says like, "Oh, Yabu's, I can predict what he's going to do. He's so simple." So that's the only reason I could get is so they could actually Toranaga could give him one last moment or whatever together because they did have a history, did serve underneath him, and Yabu did exactly what Toranaga wanted him to do. So it's almost like
Yeah.
Toranaga being like, "Hey, sorry, I made you do all this, right? I knew as soon as I did
Kind
this,
of, yeah.
you were going to
Yeah.
do all this." So
I don't know. I didn't think about it too much about the reasoning, but maybe he doesn't trust. This is before JB passes the test, I guess. So he doesn't have
Hmm.
full trust in JB, definitely doesn't have trust in Yabu. So maybe he wouldn't trust that something weird would happen when he went to execute him. I'm just grasping at straws. I like the idea better that Toranaga wanted to have a conversation with his pseudo friend, if you want to call him that,
Yeah.
just to
yeah,
to kind of clear the air and lay it all out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that JB needed to pass the test, and I think that everything leading up to the test being taken mattered. And I don't think Tornaga thought it was the best idea to have JB do that. I agree with you, Luke. I thought JB was going to like tackle Yabu and have to be separated, but I do like the thought that maybe, yes, he was hearing what was going on. He was translating some of it. You could see the pain in his eyes, but he was respecting the situation
Hmm.
and deciding not to move. So I do like that a lot. And it's just
Growth,
wild
baby.
to me. Yeah, growth. And it's wild to me where we've been talking about this all season. Yes, Paul, you're correct. Toranaga pretty much knew Yabu and let him do everything which led to his death. So one, it's like he did it without being told to do it, but Toranaga basically sent him to it. But it's betrayal. It's, he's a traitor technically, Yabu, but he's still sitting there being like, okay, I'm a traitor. It would be my honor. I would be honored, Tornaga, if you took my head off, man.
Hmm.
Like it's
yeah,
like those kind of things back and forth. It's like if I was Tornaga, I understand that Tornaga knows in the back of his head that's all part of the plan. So maybe we should forget about that. But I'd be like, dude, you're a freaking traitor. What do you mean honored? Honor about what, bro? I don't give a shit what would honor you, but it just cracks me up. But and
let
then obviously he's saying, please, please, please give me a crazy death, please. I need it.
yes, let the man be eaten by hungry fish, man. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
dude.
That's crazy to me that he wanted that.
He's bowing like he's literally like head on the ground. Please give me some crazy death. I mean, I don't want to do seppuku. That's boring as shit.
Yeah, right. That's funny. I didn't know how important those moments were going to be early on when he's writing about death and hearing their death cries, like all that stuff.
We didn't bring this up, and I don't know why we didn't. It was just something that kind of slipped by us. But in the episode after Nagakato dies, when they're making their march and they have the 49 days, freaking Yabu, like having his diary of deaths, and he's
Hmm.
like, damn, slipped on a rock, hit your head. That's it's not a great death, man. That's like right below, and then he's like listing it above and below certain things. Like he's
D
so
tier, D tier,
obsessed.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's so obsessed with the type of death, and it really gets leaned into this episode, and it's very interesting and very hilarious
yeah,
when it
yeah.
comes up.
So there's a couple things that happen before the actual death scene, which might be a top three favorite scene of mine for the whole series. So let's get there, and it starts with that night after the trial. JB goes back to his house, I guess his house, and has two conversations with Fuji. And the
Hmm.
first one is short and sweet, just sad. He
Yeah,
does a little Japanese with him, but then he looks to his right and doesn't see Mariko there, and they say no translator. Just a sad moment. And let's just take it all the way through the next day when he talks with Fuji and she tells him that she's no longer needs to commit seppuku. She completed her mission for Toranaga and she's taken an alternative and she's going to be a nun from here on out, which I think is genius writing, a genius out, I should say, because we already had Mariko had her death. Like I did not want
we
it to
did it.
actually end with Yabu and Fuji killing himself. That would have destroyed my heart. So I'm happy that they didn't do that. Instead, they do the whole nun thing. And I thought a couple of moments here were great where it's so funny because JB tries to order her not to do this, but he's putting no emotion in it. He's not actually going
Yeah,
to stop her from doing anything. It's because he cares so much about her. And it just felt like they were each other's shoulder to lean on as they're kind of like working through the implications of Mariko's death. So it was sad. I thought this was going to be
Yeah.
their final interaction, and I'm happy it wasn't because we get about two more conversations from them. But this was good closure for them too, plus Mariko's that trio that was really the heart of this show. If you want to say
Yeah.
Toranaga is the brain of the show, they were the heart, and it's just like this completion of a moment where they're realizing that their futures are going to lead them apart. They're probably never going to see each other again, and Fuji is going to find that desire to live intrinsically. So it's again, I just keep saying, just good moments, man, just good finale
Yeah.
moments.
So
Everything with Fuji and JB was so money this entire episode.
Hmm.
Unbelievable. You know, he says, I forbid you. You're my consort. And she's like, not anymore. And he's like, oh, Fuji best nun. And she like
Yes.
oh, so good. You know, and it's like one of those things where I was hoping that it was gonna be that, but you just never know. Like there's so many thoughts going through my head while these scenes are happening. And you know why he's saying I forbid you, but I'm glad that he outwardly said to her once she said you can't forbid me. I'm not your consort anymore. I'm glad he didn't like fight back about it. And he was just like, okay, I understand. Like, you're
Hmm.
going to be the best nun ever. Like, oh, it's so good.
It
I
was.
almost like I almost think he was saying that as a joke because even Fuji like kind of smiles and smirks and is like, "Hey, like I'm
Yeah.
not your consort anymore." Either way, yeah, really touching scene. The one right before that, the first time I watched it, really picked up nothing from it. I was just like, "Hey, they're just missing Mariko right now." But total stretch. Don't know if this was intentional or not, but looking back in the Willow World scene when Lady Kiku's given this little teaching lesson to her underlings saying, hey, sometimes you feel the impact of something more when it's not there than when it is actually there. So they're kind of sitting there and they realize they can't even talk. They miss Mariko
Yeah.
so much and they didn't even realize they're feeling the impact more of her now that she's not there than when she
Hmm.
actually was there.
That's
I love
perfect.
that.
That's exactly what they
Yeah.
were going for. Yeah.
You're the man. I love that.
Thanks
Say,
for
I
the
know I am.
validation. I was so unsure. I was like, this is a stretch and a
What
half.
an idiot, dude. That's not even close to correct, Paul.
Yeah.
JB has a moment of contemplation where he goes out to the garden and meditates. That happens right after
Mhm.
this. I think that just plays into everything else that goes on after this scene.
Didn't touch the
So
moss.
Maybe thinking of Ujiro the gardener, but I don't know.
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
let's talk about this next scene, which is just Toranaga meeting his son, his new son, for the first time, and then throwing some shade at Nagakata, which was great, and then getting the note from his wife, she's Lady Shizu, which is the pivotal moment upon a rewatch, like where he finds out that his plan's gonna all come together. It's Ochiba finishing Mariko's poem and saying that she's gonna keep the heir's army off the battle when war comes. And there's a couple of great quotes here, but what a bonfire she made is just an epic
Oh,
way to just talk about Mariko and what she really did. And that is like the summation of she is Crimson Sky. And that's why episode 9 was called Crimson Sky. She is what caused all of this to happen, her personal sacrifice. And Toranaga just loves it. And after you know the reveal, rewatching this scene, it's great seeing his eyes read
yeah.
that paper. It was
Hmm.
just because he's like, okay, we won. I'm like, he sees the whole future now. Like, okay, I'm basically on path to be Shogun now. It's just so cool.
Yeah. He reads it, he just closes his eyes and like takes deep breaths,
Yep.
and then he's just exactly what you're saying. First rewatch, no idea. Second rewatch, you're like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Hmm.
Tornaga, dude, it's the act. What's his name? Sonata, right? Here's Sonata is who
Hiroyuki Sanada is
Hir
Tornaga.
Hiroyuki Sonata. So when he is playing Tornaga, he's literally he's acting within acting. Like it's nuts. He has to play a role of Toranaga, who plays the role of pretending he's learning things for the first time,
Yeah.
and
He's an
then
actor who's acting because Tornaga's acting literally at all times throughout the
yeah,
show.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
and he's just
are you
incredible.
saying that Toranaga is Vinny Chase?
Yes, yeah.
He's definitely
There,
an actor playing an actor, dude.
I think this was actually written about Entourage, the whole show, and it's just an adaptation of Vinny Chase.
Yeah, he's like,
But
I am Edo Boulevard. I don't know. Does that work?
Edo Boulevard. Uh,
Yeah.
I love the line to Lady Shizu right before that, where he's like, "Hey, did you read this?" She's like, "What
Hmm.
suggestion?"
Yeah.
Doesn't say yes or no. It's like
How
100% she
dare
read
you
that.
say that? Of course I read it.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, the bonfire line, I had to take two snaps of Tornaga in his see like the two last things that he says in that statement and tweet it just because it hit me good. Just
Mhm.
how freaking money Mariko is. We really talked about it in episode 9, but Luke, you brought it up in the intro. She's everything. She is why everything happens. Tornaga explains that right here. She is Crimson Sky. And I'm so happy that she keeps getting her flowers throughout this episode, which was obviously needed because, again, she is the reason anything could happen. Now, the Nagakado thing, freaking hilarious. Stone cold by our boy Tornaga. They're like, oh, we still more Nagakado, Tornaga. And he's like, thankfully, I have more sons. We're good. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah,
And I know
out of
that,
here.
before people tell me like that's just how it is back then because, you want to just make sure your lineage is good. He's just making a statement like that. Thanks to you, I have more sons. Still, stone cold.
Yeah.
Steve Austin.
You good, Paul?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this is probably going to be a little bit of a long conversation. I'm not going to go through everything specifically because this is just Toranaga and JB. This is their scene of the episode where the one thing I want to point out before we even get to the mountaintop is on the way. JB does his goodbye to Fuji. I again thought
Yeah.
this had to be the last conversation between them or time seeing each other. It wasn't, but
Mm.
the cooler moment that I noticed here, another just perfect parallel with earlier this season where Omi asked to take his swords and guns before he goes to Toranaga, and coincidentally Fuji's there, and just like last time, we're getting the opposite reaction where he's
Yeah.
showing his growth. He's being respectful and giving his weapons. And I think Omi even realized this. Like, is he gonna
Yeah.
put up a fight? And Fuji's sitting in the back, like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? Went to whip out the guns again. But that was
Yeah.
just a cool moment. They did such a good job to have so many things early on in this season start in this city to then bring it back and like have a lot of conclusions happen in the city. It just made for genius just writing and shooting of the cinematography of all this stuff. But that was a quick part of this. The more important part is when he gets to the mountaintop. We have a bunch of things here that happen, and you guys
Hmm.
are gonna have to help me out bringing up specifics. But we have the Miraji reveal of him being a true samurai and knowing perfect Portuguese. We got the JB apologizing for everything that his part in this whole thing, and him giving him thinking he's giving the reveal that the ship was burned because Mariko made this deal to save him, and it wasn't actually Christian. So he's trying to plead his life and sacrifice himself to save the city. All of that's happening. A couple of other parts that I guess just I'll throw out there and then we can talk about it. Is just it was awesome him about to commit seppuku, but Toranaga thinks he passed the test and saves him, and that's going to have some implications. And then him, what Jimmy you brought up earlier, where Toranaga is giving him more purpose and saying like you're going to build my fleet. That all happens here. So a million things happen. I couldn't say all the summary points there. I just wanted to highlight some of the bigger things. So we could talk about this scene forever, wherever you guys want to start.
I think.
Miraji to me had the biggest impact. He's still pretending after Tornaga says we are disgusted of the destruction of your ship. Like my men will not rest until the saboteur is found. Miraji's like, hey, maybe this is too much to translate for a simple fisherman. And Toranaga's like, oh, like he still doesn't know. Just
Hmm.
go ahead and tell him.
Yeah. Mhm.
And Miraji
Yeah.
stands up straight, bows, and then just goes in speaking perfect Portuguese. My mouth was open. Like actually, I was like, I knew he was the mole, right? I
Yeah.
did not know to the depth of his skill and knowledge. One of the coolest characters for me. He shot up the ranks now. Like he wasn't even like scratching top 10. Now he might actually be there. So that reveal was just so exciting to me for some reason. Out of everything else crazy, but not as crazy as JB legitimately thrusting the sword into his chest before Toranaga catches it. Beautiful, beautiful, loved it, and just gives him a little punch. Like, dude, are you done being a diva now? Go
I
build me a
love the
ship.
the punch, dude. Yeah. I Well, you didn't bring up the fact that Fuji and JB, when they're having their conversation, and he says, "You're going to be the best nun, and we're going to have to depart here," and blah blah blah. She says, "I'm very sad for this town, for everything that's happening. Everyone's dying. There's people being killed, and I'm just very sad." And JB kind of says, like that's his awakening or whatever, where he says, "You know what? I'm going to take care of this," right? And of course, that's what leads to him saying, "Sacrifice me, keep the town safe, don't keep killing anybody. I'll die for them." And Toranaga just throughout the entire show, whether it's Yabu when he says, "Can JB be my second?" and he just says one word, no, or when JB says he's sick of Japan after the gardener is killed because of the bird, all that stuff, and he's like, and Toranaga's just like, "I'm sick of this. I'm not dealing with this. It's beneath me." Like he cracks me up how he reacts to things, and again, JB's trying to be like, "Let me be the sacrifice. Let me save all these people," and you're thinking that like he's gonna react like, "Oh, that's kind of nice. That's cute," like I'm gonna let that happen maybe, or at least I appreciate that you're willing to say that. And instead, he's like, "No, nah, you're not doing that, bro. Not taking
Yeah.
it."
He says, "Who do you think you are?" Like,
Yeah,
do you really think that if you take your life, I'll stop searching? But JP was like, "Yeah, man, this village doesn't do anything." And knowing what we know, does it kind of be like, does he kind of make Toranaga any less loyal
yeah, he's
in
killing
your
random
eyes?
people.
Yeah,
No,
that he's
so my interpretation of that was Tornaga still had a point that there are some underground spy Christians in his party, or Catholics, I should say, in his city, right? Because how else were they going to destroy the
Oh,
ship
how else were they gonna
without
do
his
it?
blessing? So even though he gave his blessing for it to happen, there were people that were willing to listen to orders that were not coming from him. So it's cruel in what he's doing because he's willing to have collateral damage, but I still think like if you're thinking it from a purely
Yeah, he's
objective
not
point of
killing
view,
randos.
exactly. Like there's still a
Okay,
point to it. So even if
okay.
John dies, like there's still going to be these people that aren't fully loyal to his household there. So
right.
I thought the same thing the first watch through, but the second watch through, you got to realize that Toranaga is the main character and he's a beast and he's a genius, but he's not necessarily supposed to be a super good guy. And I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of needs to be reminded to the audience because he very rarely is pisses you off in like what he's doing on screen, but there are some undertones of being a little evil. So that's why like this kind of falls right into his character is what I'm getting at.
I took it
yeah,
as when he was talking to Yabu, I thought he was saying, "Oh, it was easy to bribe one of the watchmen to set the gunpowder." I thought he was saying that I had one of my own guys go do it, so there were no Christian, invaders. But if there were, that makes way more sense. If there are, Catholics, spies in his village, and hopefully it was their heads, the disloyal ones that were on those
yeah,
pikes there. But that makes me feel better, if
Mhm.
there were actual people that knowingly went against
No,
Tornaga to destroy the
there
ship.
were, and even thinking back to early seasons, like the council always had more information than they should have. Like there
yeah,
has to be
yeah.
some assumed background passing of information, both for Toranaga and the council. So
Right.
that's just what he's kind of rooting out, and it saves his decision to just be cruel because he's doing it for a purpose.
Yeah, and I
Gotcha.
think it is a very important point to make. Like you said, Luke, I don't know if I would say evil, but definitely he's not always compassionate at all. Like we've learned that a lot this entire season. Yes, his greater plan is no bloodshed, peace throughout the nation, throughout the empire, whatever you want to say, but there's been plenty of times where, he's got his plan. He's tunnel vision, and it's not like JB is saying like, "Oh, I'm upset. Like they just killed the gardener. Man, this stinks." Like, and he's like, "Oh, JB, like let me pat you on the shoulder." He's like, "Stop being a little bitch. I'm not listening to your shit." I
Yeah.
mean, there's plenty of stuff like that with Tornaga, and we could talk about it later when we get to the end of the episode if we wish Tornaga and JB became more friends throughout the season instead of just let's smile at each other at the end and assume that we're going to be more and more friendly as the aftermath prologue happens that we're not going to see. But I thought it was very ironic that JB breaks down right here and he's saying, I'm going to commit seppuku so that you can save this town. Like basically saying, I love this town. But when Toranaga says, who do you think you are? And he's not letting him doing it or do it, and he's not going to stop. JB says, I've been using you from the moment I landed on this shore, right? I've had
Mhm.
a plan and I've been using you. Now, the ironic part of it is it's literally the opposite, right? Toranaga figures out who JB is, that he's a huge distraction to pretty much all of his enemies, and decides to keep him around and use him just as much as he was technically being used by
Hmm.
JB. Super ironic. JB probably thinks at this moment, even though he's speaking English and Toranaga doesn't know what he was saying, he thinks he's like letting out all of his guilt and being cruel by saying, like, you think that we're something, like you think I'm honorable with you. I freaking was using you this entire time. And Toranaga doesn't understand the translation, but he was using JB too. It's just, it's it's
Way
a,
more
yeah.
too.
Oh
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
yeah. 100%. Yeah.
The
I
enemy, screaming enemy was good though. That got me. Like the
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
time, it was like the aesthetic of the background, Japanese, just mountains look good. Like the echoing was just that was a cool moment.
Yeah. And then having having him kind of like flinching as JB was putting the sword to his stomach, like, and obviously it's Toranaga that stops it, but having him flinch, like, don't do it, like,
Mhm.
so good, so good.
Yeah, it really was, man. And this is where he gets that purpose that we've been referring to about him building the fleet for the art for the potential battle that's eventually going to happen, and it really pays off because the later scene is him working with the people of the city and like working on the woodwork of pulling a ship out and all that stuff. So it really this was a pivotal scene for JB's future.
Speaking of, perfectly after this episode is kind of all making sense to me now after your guys' explanation, but he even has a moment right before he's thinking about killing himself where he flashes forward to being an old man in the bed again. And and then he says, "Fuck it, we live and we die," right? To
Yeah.
quote Marco, which was just wonderful. Him saying
Mhm.
"fuck it" was just great. But that's like him looking at this dream that he has of being back home in his country, being an old man, and having grandchildren. That's his dream that maybe he wanted. But right there, he's saying "fuck it." Like, I don't care about any of that. We live and we die. I'm about to die and save the village doing it.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
loved it. Loved it. And that was the test, I guess, right? That was the test Torn and I was talking about. And he was like, you know what? I'll keep him around. He makes me
And
laugh.
honestly,
He-
to me, he's been low key passing that test throughout the entire season.
Yep.
How many
Mhm.
times has he putting his life on the line to save Toranaga? And how many times do we say that Toranaga should be respecting him more and more friendly with him after he saved him here, he saved him there, or he attempted to save him here, he attempted to save him there when it could have been his life?
Yeah, it was halfway through the season. And our count, it was like three times that he saved his life, even though at the
Yeah.
time it was JB or Tornaga said twice. He saved his
Yeah.
life like a million times. Uh, are we ready to move on? Because this is
Yeah,
going to
let's do
be
it.
this. I have like a whole page of notes on this scene. So I'm going to split this singular scene up of Yabu's march to his execution into two parts. We'll talk about everything up to when Crimson Sky gets mentioned, and then we get the flash to the future of the Five Armies battle. So everything before that, and Omi is the one that actually marches him to Toranaga by the cliffside. They have a couple of touching pieces of dialogue going back and forth. Omi's getting emotional. And then, of course, Yabu tells him that he treats him like a son and then gives him his death poem, which is just fucking hilarious. He's so good, man. Yabu is just perfection.
Yeah.
So we could talk about that. Um, he then goes on to actually sit with Toranaga, and then we have the words before we get the whole reveal of everything that was involved with the plan, including the reveals about him being the one that destroyed the ship on behalf of Mariko after she brokered that deal with the church. So that all happens.
Mhm.
Yabu being a little sad and poetic about all the things that he's going to miss in the future, including the battles that are going to lead to Toranaga being Shogun, which triggers that conversation, but we can hold off on that for now. So just like this initial setup, anything you guys want to specifically call out there?
The death poem, I it's just awesome. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was really good or really bad, right? So if
I
it's
think he was
really
being ironic, but
yeah,
that's how I took it.
if it was really good, it's sad, right? Because Omi like feels this touching poem and looks up and Yabu's even like pretty impressive, right? Like I think
Yeah,
my skills have never been like sharper. Like, he's super proud of it and that makes it super sad because, if that is true, if it sucked, it's hysterical because Yabu's
I
like
think
pretty
it sucked,
good,
dude.
right? Pretty
Yeah.
impressive. And Omi's like, that was terrible, but I love you. I learned so much from you anyway. So the death poem, so wild to me.
Hmm.
And the fact that he's like, yeah, don't bury me, don't burn me, just leave me and fill a dog's hungry dog's belly. Kind of nice, kind of thoughtful.
Well, he didn't because he falls into the water after
Fish, hungry
water.
fish's belly.
The hungry fishes are gonna, the hungry fishes, hungry
Yeah.
fish are gonna eat him up. Yeah, the death poem had me dying, and his last will.
Have a
He's
good
read his
death.
will the entire season. Yeah, have a good
Well,
death.
wait, hold on. So this is a perfect time for me to call this out. The person that he gives his last will to, Takamaru is his name, is one of the
Hmm.
five characters that's in every single episode. Like
Really?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's JB, Mariko, Yabushiki, Takamaru, this guy, and then Setsu, who is one of the girls that is in the whole ensemble of like Lady Kiri and Shizu, I think is in every episode as well. So it's a
That's
weird
so
Wow.
grouping of
funny.
the 10, and Toranaga is only in 9 of them. So it's just funny that he is one of the guys that's just like casually in almost every single Yabu
Yeah.
scene because he just follows him around.
And he got a line. He got a line at the end.
Like,
Have
have
a
a good
good
Yeah,
death.
death or something like that.
Yeah.
that was hilarious.
Yeah. So, all right, let's just open it up then to the rest of it
Yeah,
because it starts with like they're having this conversation talking about some of the surface level plans until we start getting to the deeper conversations where Yabu's just mind blown and he says to Toranaga, "How does it feel to shape the wind to your will?" And he says, "I don't shape the wind, I study it." And that's just the definition of Toranaga just being just a student of the world and like such a capable strategic mind and him just taking everything around him and using it to his advantage. He doesn't he's just such a good character, but he explains to Yabu and is a little surprised that Yabu doesn't understand what Crimson Sky actually was because he asked him, "Is
yeah,
it Crimson Sky?" And he's like, "No, that already happened. I thought if anybody would have seen it, you would have been able to see it." Talking about how Mariko's impact and how important she was, even goes on to give some credit to JB for being such a pivotal part of all this as well. Just some great moments, but then he goes on to explain that in 1 month's time, there's going to be the Battle of the Five Armies, and Ishido's part in this, he's going to be overconfident, and then he's going to be given a letter from Ochiba and the heir that the heir's army's not going to participate, and then all of the other councilmen are going to be expected to drop their arms and turn on him, and it's going to be a bloodless battle that's going to end up in him eventually going on to trying to start a country that never does war and is also just like a peaceful era of time. And that's the idea behind the name of Shogun. And I think you can read between the lines that he doesn't go on to tell Yabu that that's what he wants, but it is what actually is his third secret heart or whatever it is.
yeah.
And then just as spoilers of like real life history, the guy that Toranaga is based on essentially starts a 200+ year reign of shogunates just through his line. Shogunates. I don't know if that's a real word, so don't correct me on
I
that.
like that
Uh,
though.
yeah, it does sound good. So
Shogun Knights.
he does go on to win that battle in a realistic way and ends up being the Shogun. So that's what happens, and it's just all laid out here. There's so many things you can bring up. I just went over that super quick. So fire ahead.
Ooh. Money scene. Yeah, one of the first things that Yabu says is, I wish that I would be around to see your plan come together, my nephew's first battle, and the engine setting sail against the Christians who burned a ship. And Toranaga's like, well, it's not that simple. The ship had to be destroyed. It was either that or the engine's life. I kind of negotiated with Mariko and the church. It was necessary to test him, and perhaps someday I'll tell him the truth. But by then, he'll have the ship rebuilt, and I'll have to destroy it again. I was just like, that is so odd. I don't think his fate is ever to leave Japan, and
No,
it's amazing. I love that that is Toranaga's aspect on it, or his view on JB, and I'll burn his ship as many times as he wants, but he's not leaving this fucking place, and he's gonna build me that fleet. So loved it.
So let's talk about this. So Toranaga is saying, JB, you're going to build me this fleet. That's the purpose that he's given JB, right? But he's also saying there's many times throughout this show, throughout our lives together, in the past however many months or whatever it is, that I thought about letting JB die. But I decided to keep him alive. And the main reason is because he makes me laugh and because he's a distraction to my enemies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure Toranaga can use a fleet, right? I'm sure he's glad to have JB make him a fleet. But do you think differently about Toranaga when he reveals that he is, to you, is it that he's imprisoning JB in Japan, making JB setting up JB's fate for him? Or do you think that he believes that JB should be in Japan and wants to be in Japan and he keeps giving him a reason to live?
I
Like,
kind
how
of
are you
take it
taking it?
as the first one, like you're saying. Like Toranaga is kind of keeping John here, and he's kind of making him stuck here. It's not like he needs to be here. And like you're saying, it's almost like the fleet is secondary thing, right? It was like he kept John around because it made him laugh, and it was a distraction to like the church and whatnot. But in the end, he was like, "Oh, I guess since you're still here, you can build me a fleet, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So it is weird, right? It is kind of like a
It just seemed very like revealing to me when he
mm,
said, I'll burn it down again if I have to. Like one
it,
So
day I'll tell him this truth, but I'll
this is
burn
like
that
what
ship down again.
this is like what Luke was saying too, like a little bit ago, saying is his Toranaga side that is somewhat unethical that we don't always see.
I was just going to say the same thing. So thank you for quoting me.
Yeah, give you that power.
Yeah, I think that Toranaga also combined with him just, he just doesn't want to lose a tool, I think. Like there's no
Yeah.
need to give up this asset that he has in the palm of his hand almost, especially if he keeps giving him a purpose and almost making JB feel indebted to Toranaga and staying in Japan. So I don't know if it's deeper than that, but also yeah, like he's not a nice
So
guy. You got
how
to remember.
Yeah, so how does that make you feel? Let's have a little therapy session here because we wanted this entire series. When are these guys going to be freaking bros? When are they going to we saw the diving
Mhm.
scene and we're like these guys are going to be freaking homies, man. It's going to be awesome. And then you can assume, I brought this up earlier, you can assume that yes, they are going to become closer and closer and they already respect each other and this and that, but how does it make you feel to know that they don't get there and it's kind of revealed that Toranaga is just like, yeah, he makes me laugh. He's a good distraction. He's a tool. So yeah, I'm gonna make him stay.
So this kind of fits the same reasoning of thought that I had about Mariko and her motivation to live early on when we thought it was going to eventually end with her growing naturally and then wanting to live. Like I don't think that if I okay, I think that if Toranaga and JB weren't friends early, it wouldn't have made sense for them to now have recently become friends. Like there's no like if it was going to happen, it should have happened after the fifth time he saved his
Yeah.
life and they had the bonding experiences early. That's why I'm associating it with the Mariko thing. Like if it was going to happen where she was going to get a will to live, it had to happen earlier, not last minute. So I think that's the
Right.
same thing here where I almost dropped the expectations because like Yabu and JB had a better shot at becoming friends just on the
Yeah.
surface than Tornaga because he wasn't giving him anything even at like he should have been having a little bit of a leash given to him by like episode 5 or 6 after the couple times he saved him. They've had some good moments. They did the diving thing. They were friends in my head, but then it just didn't play out that way. And I just don't think there was ever going to be a situation that was going to cause it to happen if it didn't by that point.
Yeah.
That's just where I'm at.
I Yeah, I feel you. So I felt a little bit of a way, even though again I agree with you. I didn't expect it. I just felt a little bit like, man, I really
Yeah.
wanted them, and not necessarily tell me like all of a sudden they're just like freaking shaking hands and hugging it out and they're homies for life. But just to have Tornaga outwardly speak that
Mm.
it's not really against his character at all. It makes perfect sense, but just like emotionally, I was like, oh man.
No, I get it. I
Because
mean,
I mean,
trust me,
he
I
said one
wanted
day
it.
I'll tell JB, and I mean, you have to assume if he tells JB, JB's gonna be like, Jesus, man, what the hell?
Yeah.
I thought we were friends.
I think the scenes where John was going to have a conversation with Toranaga, and Toranaga almost every time is like, I haven't made a decision, and that's the end of it. Kind of adds to the, hey, we're not friends here. I would
Yeah,
give you more information, but you're just kind of around. One little quick thing, I just love the line where Toranaga is saying, Crimson Sky's finished with the Regents united. I could never send an army against Osaka. It would be my certain death, so I sent a woman to do what an army never could. That's just Mariko was a
best woman.
one woman army there. She's
Mhm.
amazing.
She's the best, man.
I have one
She's a
other point
freaking
too,
bonfire.
because that was a great quote. This whole episode was filled with great quotes. Another one that I thought was awesome. The first time watching it, it's the end of the scene where Toranaga, in response to Yabu asking him about, are you trying to become Shogun? Is like, is that the plan? He goes, why tell a dead man the future? Cool line
Yeah.
in its own, but knowing what we know, where at this point in time, it's supposed to be up in the air. If you don't know the history
Oh
of what
yeah.
actually goes on to happen, why tell a dead man the future could just be like ambiguous, like I'm not going to tell you my plans. But knowing that he eventually becomes Shogun it makes that line so much colder. Saying he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you really want to become Shogun?" He's like, "Why? What? Don't worry about the future." And he's like, "I'm basically going to become Shogun." That's just to me, it was a cool line on the second rewatch where I just thought it was worth bringing up.
Agreed. Love that. And I thought it was also important to bring up the fact that also part of this plan here when Toranaga finally gets Ashiba's letter and she lets him know that she is going to pull back and the air will no longer support Ishido. Not only is it important that the troops aren't going to march, but Ishido was fully expecting and needing the flag of the air, the name of the heir to legitimize his claim against Toranaga for war, right? He says that in the council meeting. He says the heir's name will legitimize us. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but and Toranaga also explains that like Ishido might have enough men to keep attacking without the heir, but the honorable thing about it and how their minds work, if he didn't have the heir's backing, it's like it's just two like sets of rebels attacking each other. He's not representing the heir anymore. He's just a
Right.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the banner never left Osaka, so he had no right to fight in the heir's name, right? So
Hmm.
Yep.
Regent's like, hey, so you're screwed now. Like your buddy's not here. You kind of lied to us, and you're done.
The
Hmm.
Kyono tag team's like, we're out, bro. We're done.
Yo, no,
The
I love that.
tears in the chat for a new Bingetown legend, Yabushiki, aka Yabu. What a sad scene. He whips after hearing that response from Toranaga, he just stabs himself right away. And this
Yeah.
time Toranaga's got it, one shots his head, not like
Yeah,
when he was younger and took nine
That
swings
was that was a freaking clean slice.
easily.
that
Yeah.
And
was
then his recoil after with his form.
Yeah,
Woo!
the flicking the blood off was
Yeah.
so cool.
his blade is amazing too, with like the tilted end of the handle. Oh God, his blade and the scabbard was just amazing. But Yabu, man, he wanted a great death. That seemed like a great death.
Yeah,
Torn.
I
Having
agree.
the future Shogun kill you, pretty much.
Yeah, kind of
I'll
like
take it.
actually come clean, not with everything, but he reveals some shit and he doesn't do that to anybody.
Hmm.
So he and when Yabu first walked up, he was like, "Well, I guess this is the end of the line. It goes no further than this between us." And they kind of were friends, kind of, not
Yeah.
really. I mean, he was
I mean,
being
again,
used, but
it's one of those things where Tornaga understands people. He studies the wind. He studies people. He knows who Yabu was. So
mm,
that's how he would never be surprised by who Yabu is or what he does. So he could still be quote unquote friendly to him because he's just befriending the person of Yabu, but he's not expecting anything from him. What he's expecting is exactly what he's getting. And
Hmm.
that's why when Yabu, in during the actual quote unquote trial scenario, Tornaga is very much so like your POS, you're going to kill yourself at dusk the next night and you're going to lose all of your lands and blah, 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 blah. Right. But when they have the conversation by themselves with no ears listening, it was almost just like, all right, Yabu's going to express everything he needs to. Toranaga's going to express what he needs to. And I'm not going to say it was like a friendly conversation, but it wasn't like Toranaga's like, you're a traitor. I hate you and I'm going to kill you right here. It was two people having a conversation that have known each other for a long time.
Mm.
Yeah,
Man,
exactly.
that secret heart line, insane. The end of episode one, Toranaga with his like basically monologue before the credits is talking about, the three different hearts and the third secret heart. And right at the very end, Yabu even brings it up. He's like, "What? That's your third secret heart that you've been talking about?" I know,
Hmm.
Luke, you mentioned it once or twice already. And yeah, that's such good writing, man. That's such good writing.
Yeah, that's the third time the Secret Heart's been mentioned, which is nice. And they also did the same thing with the Eightfold Fence, where it wasn't just a one-time thing for the moment. They bring it up
Mm.
multiple times, so it's very ingrained in their culture. Are we good to move on? We got two more
Yep.
scenes, and then we can
Yeah.
do our rankings and get out of here. This is obviously going to be a long one, so our finale always is. But these next two scenes are kind of quick. I think we covered the meat of this episode. This is the final conversation for the fourth time in my head between
Mm.
JB and Fuji, where they go out and they give her closure with her family, and she spreads the ashes of her now passed son and husband. And I thought this was awesome because it's episode one started with Todoyoshi, her husband, being disrespectful and us making fun of him. And now it's
Yeah.
basically the show is ending with her moving on and spreading these ashes. Never in a million years would have thought that I cared about Todoyoshi, let alone Fuji either, like both of them,
Yeah.
after the first episode. But she became such an important character, and she even helps JB move on from Mariko. And she says, "Let your hands be the last to hold her," as he gets rid of her cross. And to me, that confirmed that the vision of the future was a dream of a dream. So,
Right.
whatever else you guys want to bring up there.
I don't
I,
really have too much there. Just pretty straightforward. Just great
Hmm.
scene, great closure between those two finally. And glad they had it. They smiled and had a touching moment between the both of them. So loved
Yeah,
it.
love Fuji.
Kyle from Bingetown, for anyone who doesn't know Kyle just by name as a listener, but he actually texted me this tweet and it's freaking cool. So apparently on the Shogun official podcast, the daughter of the author said that the bay where they filmed Fuji and Blackthorne scattering the remains, it's the same bay where the author of the book where his ashes were also scattered in real
That's
life.
so cool.
Wow.
That is
That's
Yeah.
so
sweet.
cool.
So
So let's go to that actual final scene right by the water, where JB is leading all of the men of of Ajiro into pulling the Erasmus out of the sea. And
mhm.
there's just a couple of cool things here that happen, but mostly Buntaro comes and has his final confrontation with JB where he shows his sign of respect. You could tell that what Mariko did to him 2 episodes ago, I believe, had such an impact on him. Maybe it caused an internal change for the better because he's actually willing to be open to the Anjin. Like it felt like a really good moment for him. And he even hands JB after it's successful, even hands him the cool ass water bottle, by the way. Like I guess that's
Yeah,
bamboo or
right.
whatever. So freaking cool.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that happens is John goes and has a moment where he's looking at Toranaga, and it seems to me that there's like this moment of understanding between them that like they serve their parts in this grand conspiracy, and like they basically are where they need to be, and they both have this respect for each other, and it just felt like a very good closure moment. They didn't even have to have words between them, and it just fades out with just this epic shot of Toranaga's back with the Japanese terrain, and it just has the cool closing music, and it was just scene. It was fucking awesome.
Scene.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
goddamn show
Finn.
crushed it.
The
Yeah, I just
title sequence music playing as Tornaga looks out into the sky gave me goosebumps.
hmm
It
Yeah.
was so good. And yeah, that JB and Tornaga stare, like something. They must have had a whole conversation between that stare because JB just kind of like looks a little question, then he's like, hmm. And he chuckles a little bit, and then he seems to just finally get it and
hmm
get
Yeah.
like Toranaga and who he is and his whole plan. So absolutely loved it. The only other amazing, probably like the funniest quote,
I know where you're going.
dude. JB's like Buntaro's come in to grab the rope. They got the second win. He's like, "All right, let's get this." He starts yelling the classic, sailor had to get them motivated. You shit rags, let's get it. And Miraji turns around and he's like, "All
He's
right, I
gonna
got it, I got
translate.
it." And he's gonna translate everything. And
I
yeah,
got
he's
it. I
like,
got it. I
no,
got
no,
it.
no,
So
no.
He's
good.
like, leave that between us.
Yeah, I was
So good.
laughing. It was so
Yeah.
good. Loved it.
Yeah, it
Loved
was
it.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Anything
That's
else, man,
it,
before we go
guys.
to rankings, dude? I feel like we hit everything. What else can
Yeah.
be said? It seems like I'm speaking on behalf of us all. We loved this show to our core. I'm gonna finally look back on Shogun Tuesdays and our Wednesday recordings for as
Yeah.
long as our podcast is going, as this was one of my favorite shows we've ever covered. It was it at least in my house over here in Philly, we were seated every night on Tuesday, me, Dave, and Alki, my roommate, just watching this. Like we set time apart to watch this together. Like it's one of those type of shows that I feel like deserves that level of just energy, and it just like doing the rankings was fun, like just talking
Yeah.
about tour, like this is all just so good that I'm ready to just go through our three categories and basically sign off. And
Yeah.
as a
Let's
reminder,
do it.
let's start with the favorite episode, because I'll let any of you guys speak if you think differently, but mine is just going to be episode 9, Crimson Sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That seems to be both
Mm-hmm.
critically the one that was most acclaimed, and just conversation wise, people seem to be really, really high, like hype on the show after that one released. It was the best one. It was Mariko's episode. It was basically the peak, since we never actually got a battle. It was like the most like climactic part of the entire show. Any thoughts you guys want to throw out on why? I just feel like it was kind of going to be unanimous that we all loved episode 9 the most.
So much happened in it. It was so tense. My heart was beating throughout every scene because every scene meant so much. Uh, yeah, and we could, if we did like our top three scenes, I might have two scenes from that episode in there.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's phenomenal.
To have quote unquote everything come together. Obviously it fully came together in episode 10, but to have everything come together where we finally understand what Marco's purpose is. She's a Crimson Sky. What Toranaga's plan most likely is. There's no fluff at all in the entire episode. Every single episode means something. We're literally talking about all these different branches of a plan happening in every single piece of this episode. We're like, Jesus, Toranaga knew that was going to happen, or he set that up, and this and that. It was just beautifully done. And then obviously we talked about all of the acting performances between Anna Sawai and Yabashigi and John JB and Oshiba, just amazing stuff. So yeah, I agree. Episode 9 was the episode.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I figured that one wasn't going to have too much debate on it. So let's move on to the more interesting categories. Let's do favorite scenes first, and I won't go first, but just whoever wants to step up, we'll leave it to your discretion to see how many you end up saying, because I'm gonna copy you there.
I won't say too many then. But first one, number one scene, Mariko walking to the gate. That was just
Okay.
so intense. I think that's the first thing I think about now when I'm going to look back at it. The
Mhm.
crazy, please kill him to the gate guards, just the casual escalation of it, and then finally her with the Naginata just going at it, getting a few guys. JB looking up top, loved it. Then I'm gonna go. I don't know why. This is like scenes that just like I thought of immediately. Not I didn't think about it too much. It was just kind of like, all right, I thought of that scene first. That's gonna be one. So I thought of this scene second. So I'll put it as my number two, and that's dinner with Buntaro.
Okay,
And
that's definitely not a weird choice. Yeah, that's a great choice.
just so wild. We talked about that, broke it down forever, but just again, just insanely tense. And then I'll just round it out with Josen exploding at the end of what was that
Mm,
episode? End of episode 4, I
yeah,
think. Nagakata just taking over, and when those first cannons fired and those bodies just like disintegrated into blood, I was completely shocked.
yeah,
So.
yeah.
Yeah, those I have so many other ones listed and now I want to take them back, but I won't take them from you guys. So those are the first three that I thought of.
Yeah, I don't need to keep naming ones, but I'll name one or two here. And the first one for me is I want to say Anna Sawai just because of her acting performance, but Mariko going in to speak to Ishido and the rest of the council and Ashiba for the first time, putting them in their place.
Great, great one.
Acting, writing, everything about it, phenomenal, perfect to me. I don't know if I can get away with not saying the Yabu and Toranaga scene at the end, just because it's everything being explained, everything coming together between these two people, that these two characters that we've loved for better or for worse throughout the series. And then I'm gonna low key go with I'm gonna group them together and just go with the Fuji and JB scenes. Maybe
Okay.
recency bias, but I really did love them this episode. All of them. They really were tugging at the heartstrings. Again, this character that we thought was going to be nothing was pulling at the heartstrings more than almost any character in the show except for Mariko, I would say.
Yeah. You guys took all the good ones. So my ordering was I have the dinner scene as my favorite scene of the show too, Paul, for two
Uh,
reasons. One, it was the beginning is hilarious with them doing the who's a
Yeah.
manlier man and drinking the sake, like, and they just get hammered. But when I think of the show, I think of the bow shot scene that Buntaro
Yeah.
shoots and it goes right by Mariko, not just because of Boy Brain. That was the most badass moment of the entire show for me. It did a lot for Mariko's character to show you how one, like her, she hates her husband, but she still has the trust in him as like a great samurai, and it showed you how willing and honorable she was. It kind of reinforced it at that point of the season, so it was all just that's the scene. Like I freaking loved it. And apparently that happens in the book almost like exactly like that. Like people were hyped and knew that it was coming when they saw the trailer. So that scene
Mm.
sticks out. So I had that as one, Mariko's council scene as two, which Jimmy, you said, Yabu's death scene at three, and then Hiromatsu's death scene at four, which we
Oh,
said,
yeah.
Paul, when that happened on, I think it was
That was
seven
gonna
or
be
I forget. Yeah, we're like, that's probably gonna be top
and that's
three,
not
and he's gonna
said.
survive. But it literally just fell at four for me because Yabu's death scene was
Yeah.
definitely in my top
Yeah.
three.
Other
But
honorable mentions that I had, just the Willow World scene, Lady Kiku entranced me. I don't know what it was. The way she talked was just, oh my God, I melted like butter.
mhm.
And then
Mhm.
real early on, Yabu drowning, after he's going to try to
Yeah.
save Rodriguez and JB up on the cliff, seeing him almost commit seppuku and just having this feeling of awe and just he couldn't believe it. So we could go on, dude. We could
Yeah.
literally just break down every scene and probably rank it because they're so damn good.
Damn
So let's
right.
move on to characters and then we're done. So I'm going first because I went last there, where I did five. I'm just not going to talk
Yeah.
through specifics for all of them, but this is where I'm at. I'm sticking with Mariko as my favorite character.
Ooh.
Second, JB.
Thumbs up.
Third,
I don't, did you see
Toranaga.
that, Luke?
No, I
Yeah.
did
The
see that. I
bubble
did.
thumbs up. Yeah.
So Mariko, then JB, then Toranaga at number three. So like the big three, the main three were the best three in my opinion, which is always good about a show when the characters that are in it the most are the best characters. And then 4, 5 was Yabu, then Fuji. My only thing that I'll just throw out there, and I made this metaphor loosely earlier in this podcast, but to me it just felt like JB was the heart of the show. Like he was the emotions, he was the one we got to go through that character growth and realize what Japan was actually like and learn through his eyes. He was the heart, he was the emotion. Toranaga, on the other hand, being my third favorite, was the brain. He was the strategy. He was the plot mover. And I actually would consider Mariko more the glue of the show. She kind of brings everything together. So that's why those are my top three characters. And then, of course, Yabu and Fuji right there.
I literally have your order, Luke, except I have JB then Mariko. So I have JB, Mariko, Tornaga, Yabu, and then Fuji.
Well, that's because you're sexist, right?
Yeah.
No way. I love Mariko and Fuji.
Yeah. Jimmy doesn't watch shows with female main characters. Um, no, I
Except
have
for Bingetown TV, literally, we love the female characters so much.
yeah,
From the Last Kingdom to the 100 to the Magicians.
Wynonna.
House
Obviously,
of the
we talk about
Dragon. Yeah, dude, are you
Winona.
kidding me?
Yeah, we obviously talk about male characters, but we freaking always love the female badass characters.
Yeah, I feel like we gush over them more.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much the same five, ordering slightly different. Marco number one, Tornaga number two, just because his pure genius of everything kind of outweighed John's emotional journey for me personally. So yeah, John number three, and then yeah, Fuji, Yabu. I originally had Hiramatsu at five when I made this list because he was such a good character, especially the way he went out. But no, Yabu's definitely above him. He's too
Hiramatsu
good.
would probably be my number six. Like he's
Yeah.
definitely next
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
Where,
all
where,
these
where would you put
characters.
where would you put Nagakata, Luke?
He's 1B. I thought that was assumed.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mariko and Nagakato. I thought I said that.
Mariko and Nagikato are the top two.
definitely.
All right,
Let's
guys, is
sign
that
out,
it?
boys. That's freaking it. That
Oh,
was a
God,
that was a
it's
journey and a half, man. That was so
Yeah.
fun.
Do you have a poem, Paul, for our ending of
I was
Shogun?
literally just about thinking. I was like, "Shit, is there a poem that I could quote?" But nah, go. No, nah, just leafless
Nothing.
branch.
All right,
Leafless
fine. We're
branch
we're
that.
not cultured. This is a leafless branch podcast. But guys, if you like what you heard, we really appreciate you following along with us this entire series. 10 episodes. Well, I guess not technically 10 Shogun Tuesdays because the first two eps dropped together, but we had a blast every single week with you all. Like I said in the intro, we are Bingetown TV. We cover so many different shows. We've been a podcast for 4 years, and we've covered, I don't even know, 100, over 100, probably more TV shows, and we will be covering so many more. So if you like what you heard, just check us out at bingetowntv.com. Check us out on any of your favorite podcast apps at Bingetown TV. If you want to keep the conversation going, if you can't get enough of Shogun, we'll talk to you about it forever. So hit us up on the Discord or Twitter. We've been talking to people on both of them. The Discord link will be in the description, and our Twitter is at Bingetown TV. You can find us there. Let's talk some more Shogun. Let's talk TV. Let's talk movies. We love having this community to talk to. Otherwise, we'll see you in May. We'll see you in June. We're going to have a lot more pods coming out in between them, just talking about what we're watching, what we should watch, this and that. But our next big shows we're covering will be Dark Matter, The Boys, House of the Dragon, and The Bear. So we have some juggernauts coming. It's going to be a big couple months for us. So once again, we are Bingetown TV. And what's today? Today is Tuesday. Today is Wednesday. Today's not Shogun Day. Thank you so much for listening.